May 2025 meeting of the Hadley Public Schools. Do I have a motion to call this meeting to order?
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Thank you. Christine will not be joining us. We send her well wishes. Hope she's feeling better soon. We are going to go right into covering any adjustments to the agenda. Annie, can you take us through it?
There are no adjustments to the, one adjustment to the content. We do not need an executive session this evening. There's a slight change in order, although we're still going to play it by ear. Our student representative report was moved to the top. So we'll have that happen when she arrives. And of course, sometimes I should check my email. Oh, no, she's coming.
We can be flexible.
Joined the wrong meeting. Okay, let me email her. She joined that. She's in a wrong calendar.
All right, we'll get started with public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to comment, go ahead and raise your digital hand, and you can keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and pertinent to the items on the agenda. Go ahead and raise your digital hand now. Okay, seeing none. We will start off with the student representative report, but the student rep isn't here yet, so we'll come back to the student rep. Annie, do you want to take us through a few superintendent updates?
I do. So thank you. I just was making sure that Aisha had everything that she needed. I'm sure she'll be joining us. I keep this brief because I know that Aisha will be focusing on all of the amazing honors of our students. I would respectfully request that if for some reason Aisha doesn't make it, we just circle back to this at the end.
No problem.
I will call just your attention to some things that have happened this month in our schools. Governor Healy's office issued a press release about the early literacy grants. And good news on this grant, we were one of only 13 school districts to be awarded this grant. It's Hadley Elementary School working with the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And the conversation, this will be a multi-year grant with the goal of perhaps looking to make Hadley Elementary School into a lab school for exemplary literacy instruction. So really exciting news there. Hadley Elementary School has also been named a distinguished PLTW Project Lead the Way for a third year in a row. And rate on our special education determinations, Hadley Public Schools received a score of 85%, earning 35 out of 41 points. That was excellent. Great job to Dr. Utley and her team. And as you know, we have officially received our designations in the final 2 pathways for advanced manufacturing and a pathway in healthcare and social. But that's not everything. I always encourage people to read these summaries of the week, but that was just an example of 1 week. Aisha is here. I'm happy to answer any questions, but Aisha is here and she can certainly talk about all the great student things.
Great. We'll bounce to Aisha next, but before we do, I want to congratulate the team behind the honor for the 3rd year in a row on Project Lead the Way. That's a wonderful thing that we keep getting recognized for our good work. So thank you, Annie, and thank you to the team that spearheads that. And how awesome to have the additional pathway of advanced manufacturing and engineering. And that is going to really interest students. I know it'll definitely interest my son. I'm really excited to hear that. And yeah, so many great accomplishments here. Let's turn it over to our student. Aisha, are you there?
Yeah, there she is.
Terrific. Welcome.
Thank you.
To give us your student update.
All right. So, hi, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well and enjoying the warm weather. I know I am, as it is a perfect end for the senior year, as I will be graduating in May. It's perfect for gardening and exercising outdoors, and definitely a better change from constant studying and completing classwork. Moving on to the report, I would like to give a shout out to the MAFLA winners. So MAFLA is a Massachusetts Foreign Language Association. And congrats to Liliana Ribeiro for winning the MAFLA Visual Arts entry for the year of 2025. She has been awarded $100 as well as a certificate from MAFLA for her poster To the Seal and Beyond. Additionally, congratulations to Cassandra Dion for receiving the MAFLA Award for Leadership as well as a bronze medal for the National French Contest Grand Concours for level 3, and Kylie Robert for winning a bronze medal for level 1, Hannah Gubin Falk for receiving a MAFLA Award for the Excellence in French, and Elizabeth Rotuna for receiving the MAFLA Award for Excellence in Spanish. Apologies for butchering any French words. Several other students also received certificates from MAFLA with their entries. I would also like to give a shout out to the MAMH winners. So basically for the 5th year, MAMH, aka Massachusetts Association for Mental Health, hosts an art contest for middle and high school students across the Commonwealth. And several Hopkins Academy students entered, and congratulations to Ethan Villanueva for winning first place in this film category, and Rama Abdegalil for winning second place in writing through a poem she wrote about mental health. Another shout out to the Hopkins Academy Spring Concert. I would like to congratulate the high school and middle school choir and the high school and middle school band, as well as the jazz band, for their spectacular performances in the spring concert held on May 15th. Through teamwork, determination, and hard work, they created a wonderful experience of music full of diversity of all kinds of genres, including classical, jazz, pop, etc. Additionally, there was a solo performance, and I would like to give a shout out to the members of that performance, them being Jada Matry, Victoria De Silva, Matthew De Silva, and Corey Stanley, for their breathtaking independent performance of Thought It Was Love by Ty Myers. They exemplify the courage of Hopkins students, showcasing their remarkable talents with flying colors. Additionally, another shout out to the Music in the Parks Festival competition. So, the high school and middle school choir and high school middle school band participated in this competition, and through their hard work, practice, and determination, high school band received second place. High school chorus received third place, middle school band received first place, and middle school chorus received second place. Additionally, for the reminder of the report, I would like to remind you all of the Hopkins Academy graduation. So, come support the Hopkins Academy seniors as they graduate from high school on May 30th. This event will last from 6 p.m. to around 8 p.m. And if you cannot make it physically or in person, rather, it will also be recorded live on Hadley Media for anyone to watch online. Additionally, after high school, our seniors have exciting journeys they will be taking, such as going to college or university, such as UMass, Amherst College, Suffolk University, etc., or taking gap year, both to continue accumulating knowledge. Additionally, the seniors are quite grateful for the time at Hopkins Academy. One senior even stated from a testimonial I received was that I am so grateful for all the opportunities and the community that Hopkins has to offer. Though I will be going to university to continue my learning, I will miss the staff and the students a lot. Shout out to Mr. Foreman, Mr. Marsnick, and Ms. Lenham for being awesome teachers.
Thank you so much, Aisha. That is it's so exciting to see our students shining bright on so many levels, from French to awareness of mental health to music, and it's really wonderful to have you lift them up and have their accomplishments recognized as well. Thank you for doing that. I invite any other comments or questions from my colleagues.
I don't have any questions, but I really do enjoy.
I'm sorry, Tara.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on my I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say I really enjoy your student updates. Not having a kiddo at this point in Hopkins, I love hearing about what all the students over there are doing and their accomplishments. It's really great to hear it. So thank you for providing it.
Excellent. Thank you, Aisha. And I neglected in my report, was not a part of your report, Aisha, who always does such a thorough job of meeting with me and going through everything. I should have included in mine, because it was a few weeks ago, Rising Hopkins Academy senior Elizabeth Bertuno has been recommended to serve on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's Regional Student Advisory Council.
Congratulations. That is a big deal.
We were asked, which is really, we were asked to find students, and specifically somebody from the executive office contacted me and said, we want Hadley represented. It was quite nice. So thank you, Ms. Cabizzo, for not relenting until she let someone, and here we are.
That is great. Paul, you had your mic on mute. I know you always have thoughtful comments. Welcome you to
So I just wanted to say thanks. Like Tara said, I really appreciate hearing this. Just it seems like there's some really great news coming out every week. So thanks for that.
You're welcome, everyone. It's really nice to hear those things, and I'm really grateful to be able to do these reports for you.
And really excited about your graduation, Aisha. It's a big deal. It's just right around the corner.
I know, right? I'm so excited.
What's up for you next? Where are you going?
I'm going to be going to UMass, doing biomedical engineering.
Excellent. Really exciting.
And a big family vacation coming up. And actually a place, I mean, it's a huge country, but our school committee chair has visited there, I think, a few times now.
Where is this?
India.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a wonderful place to visit. Exciting, overwhelming, lots of sights and sounds. It's all in one. So rest up in advance and go and pace yourself is what I would say. Terrific. All right. Well, we're going to move next to other parts of the agenda, and let's see. We've already tackled A and B, so we're moving next to the HPS Federal and State Grants Manual. Chris.
Sorry, there we go. I was muted. So attached to your agenda is something new basically for Hadley. I've seen this in other districts and thought we should probably have one here as well. It's 42 pages of thrilling and exciting reading basically that tell you how we treat our grants. It's really to cover ourselves in case of an audit and they ask, well, what's your grant plan? Now we can give them something. I don't believe it's something you need to approve. It's just something that we wanted to share with you, just so you know that it actually exists. So, you know, if anybody ever asked, do you have a grant, policy manual? You could say, yes, we do. And so basically it just tells, that we will, it basically assures that we will cover all procurement laws, both related to the state of Massachusetts, but also to federal grant policies. It explains how our grant accounts are set up, our general ledger accounts, all kinds of information that I would imagine only an auditor would find interesting, but nevertheless, it's important that we just have it all together. So I prepared it and just present it to you.
Chris, I'm so glad you're on top of this. And today's day where grants are, going to be fewer and far in between and also kind of precarious in nature. It's really good to have our housekeeping in order as it relates to our policies and that which auditors want to make sure we are thinking about. So thank you for pulling this together. I will read it. It might be, I'll put it in the stack, but I definitely will read it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move next to donor recognition for the Hopkins Academy athletic fields and also sign samples. Chris.
Okay, so again, attached to the agenda is an updated version of the text for the signs. I got some feedback from you guys the last couple of meetings and just made those changes to the text file. Also attached is a version of the signs in, basically thanking the donors, and it's in 3 different colors. That's on the sign samples link. And we've got a blue with gold text, we've got a gold with blue text, and then we've got a white with blue text. And these were done basically just to get your feedback as to what you thought the best choice would be for the coloring of the signs. I certainly have my choice, but of course yours is the one that counts here.
Also, Chris, this is a 3-sided sign, if I recall correctly.
Correct, yes.
And the colors will vary on all 3 sides as well, or do they have the potential to do that, or is the idea that you will be using one color scheme and all 3 sides will mirror that?
That is really entirely up to you. We can do a different color on each side, or we can have the same coloring pattern on all 3 sides. Either way is fine.
Great. I'll open it up to feedback and comments to the team.
When I first looked at it, I thought that it was all 3 separate sides. I had to read it and I thought, oh, that's kind of neat having each side a different color like that. That looks very festive to our school. So I kind of like the idea of having it different colors as long as it's not hard to read.
Yeah.
It's a little tougher on the screen to read it just because it's, of course, a lot smaller. These will be 3-foot by 5-foot signs, so the text will be significantly bigger than what you're seeing on the screen. But I think that is important to take into account. We don't want somebody to be squinting at it trying to make it out either.
Can I ask a question? And I apologize if this has been discussed already, but in terms of what we're going to use to create these signs, is there like the potential for this color to fade over time, or is it going to be protected?
It will be protected. I told the sign company that basically we would need something that was UV protected because it's basically going to be out, depending on the side of the sign, of course. Some sides will take more of a beating from the sun than others, but nevertheless, yeah, we don't want it to fade in a couple of years. And he assured us that they would use fade resistant and UV protected vinyl for the signing.
Okay. And you said 3-foot by 5-foot?
Yes.
Okay.
I personally also like the 3 different colors. I think like at any one side you might see one, and then if you're at one of the angles you'll see 2. And I think the way they play off one another, it looks really nice. I think when it's large it'll be definitely much more legible, but I really like what I see. I think you're headed in the right direction.
Good. Okay. That's good to hear. What I will have him do is to do all 3 sides in all 3 colors then, and bring it to you for, hopefully final approval at that point. If you could review the text file at some point and just shoot me an email or something and let me know if you see anything you don't like. I would like to thank the Hadley Facebook group, who I researched and looked everywhere and I could not find when Hopkins became a public school anywhere. I mean, I just couldn't find that information. And I reached out to the Hadley Facebook group and just said, I'm working on a sign for Hopkins and I need to know when they became a public school. And it had to be 20 minutes and I had several responses, and it's a little tricky because they started accepting all of the public in 1865 as long as they passed the test. But it actually didn't get to town control with a town school committee until 1903. So I used 1903 as the date when it became a public school. But I really just wanted to thank all of those from the Hadley Facebook group because it was so helpful with this.
That's great news. I'm glad you found your information. And yeah, there's some really active people who are very knowledgeable about the history of Hadley in some of those groups. That's terrific that you were able to draw on their expertise.
Not only did they go to the Facebook group, but the Edward Hopkins Foundation. I think we have people just coming in here, dropping off books. These people are committed.
Yeah, that's true, you're right.
They came out of the woodwork. They had all kinds of information.
I love it. I love it. Paul, I didn't hear your perspective on the signs. I would love it. And Aisha, I welcome your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was originally keyed in on the white, but just to be sure, I think folks are saying, Chris, one of each color. Is that how, like each side would be a different color? If that's what folks are saying, I think that's intriguing as well. Yeah.
I had the same thoughts as Mr. Pfeiffer as well. Like I was leaning towards the one with white and blue, but then when there was the idea that each one would be a different color, that is also quite interesting as well because I like the diversity of the colors and it would look really nice.
Yeah, I agree. And we may also, I mean, Chris, I would welcome you to give some thought to like the yellow sign potentially being the one that faces the parking lot so that it's a little bit like of a caution, like don't drive onto the field kind of thing. And maybe the white one is the one that, I don't know, is like thinking about glare and baseball players, but you know, factor that in and
Sure, yeah.
the three would look nice together.
Okay. Will
Great.
do. I will also speak with the vendor just to see what color might be more likely to fade, and maybe have that one, you know, when the sign is put up, facing away from the sun, you know, if possible. We know the sun is basically following across the fields during the day, so that's the side that would really get hit. But yeah, I'll get his feedback as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So also on your list was the naming school facilities. And I know this came up as a conversation last month when there was a proposal to accept a gift and create a new naming opportunity. And Annie pointed out for me that we kind of sort of do have a policy. It's tucked into this naming school facilities, even though we weren't talking about naming a facility. The third paragraph, I believe, talks about, let's see, is it the third or fourth, Annie? I think it's the
fourth refers, I believe, to
that's it. It's the fourth.
intent to consider, review, and vote on naming opportunities, and refers to that really process.
And it's not just, you know, when the opportunity to name or dedicate a new school, which we're not doing, or school-related property, structure, or facility is forthcoming, an orderly procedure will be communicated at the next available school committee meeting. The committee's agenda should clearly reflect the intent to consider, review, and vote on naming opportunities. And what I'd like to ask us to do, because as we said last time, you know, just in the last, you know, year, we've had playground funding opportunities, we've had field funding opportunities. There will be future opportunities for building things and funding them. And we want to approach it in a thoughtful and systematic manner. I think, Tara, you were very clear and upfront at the playground opportunities, right? Like these are the naming, these are the opportunities, these are the different levels, this is what you get for it. And it's sort of determined at the outset so that you can give everyone an opportunity. And also that it's you can think about what scalable opportunities. And I point to the trustees who had that amazing gazebo project and the bricks, and each brick was an opportunity to sponsor and recognize someone in memory or living. And that is a scalable opportunity. You can have many bricks. You can create, as you know, a pretty sizable patio opportunity. So I'd like for us, especially with the Fields project still being, it seems, an opportunity to raise funds, to think with an eye towards that. Even though we're not at the outset of the project, we should, if we are going to be thinking about additional opportunities, we should capture our thinking about what we've already done and how that's in alignment with what can be. So I welcome that that process, and it might be at the next school committee meeting or future ones.
So perhaps would be helpful just something for the school committee to consider. I know there have been some breakdowns, but there's been multiple meetings ago, so perhaps it would be helpful to have just on one page, what were these or what are the naming opportunities? Again, summarizing who gave, some of that's embedded in the signs, but the naming opportunities, who gave, where people's names are showing up, and these additional opportunities, and be clear that people have the opportunity during public comment to weigh in on that. Is that something you'd like to see, or I'm open to whatever the committee would like to see?
Yeah, I think if there's still a question about a naming opportunity, then I think that we should do that. Um, I I think the conversation last month, and I don't know, Paul, you weren't there, so I'm not sure if you had a chance to see the recording or not, but one thing that I really wanted, like when I heard about the idea of putting a recognition on the scoreboard, I had a couple of concerns that that came up for me. One was, maybe it's just me, but I find it hard to read the scores on the scoreboard when I'm on the boys' side of the field. It's pretty far away. The letters are small. They're white. And I was concerned that like adding more text to that whole space would make it a little bit more difficult to see. That was one question that came up in my mind. And another was the fact that the boys team draws so many more viewers on a given sports day than the girls' opportunity. It's that way, unfortunately, and I wish it weren't the case, but unfortunately, it seems to be the case. It follows with basketball as well. Like we honor the girls' awards and awarding of banners at halftime at the boys' game because it brings in the bigger crowd, for instance. So sponsorship correlates too in terms of visibility and where recognition goes. So I just think we need to think about the whole, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation when it arises. I welcome any additional thoughts or comments or questions that anyone might have.
I'll chime in. I think last time, when it was brought to our attention, it was about adding in memory of somebody onto one of the boards. And I had just brought it to our attention looking, like you mentioned, we had clearly outlined for the playground where recognition would be honored and at what level, and it was very clear to everybody. And just so the public knows, that is still coming. We're actually still waiting for more funding to come in this spring, and then the committee hasn't forgotten about being able to recognize those people in the way that it was outlined. But having something very very, I guess not necessarily guidelines, I think is what I had suggested, is kind of like guidelines for anybody to be able to look at and see kind of the process that we take and our mindset of what's going on, so it doesn't feel at random of, oh yeah, this person asked for a name to be on the scoreboard, yep, we'll do that, and then the next one comes across and it's like, nope, we're not putting a name on the slide. Just like consistency and how we make our decisions and the process that we take. And I know Annie had started looking into other school districts and finding out what other people do, and it doesn't have to be super black and white, but at least a little bit of a process that makes it a little bit more clear, so that it seems fair and equitable and how we make those decisions instead of a case by case, right? Because we do have a lot of very large donors who don't have recognition, that have donated year after year after year. And I wouldn't want anyone to feel slighted. And I just feel like our process, at least going forward, I would like to have it be a little more transparent on how we decide what gets approved and how we honor these people.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Tara. I appreciate that. I also will add that there are so many people that have come before us. I think of like Art West's wife, who was on the school committee for years and years and years. And I know Fred Siaglo's mom was on the school committee for years and years and years. And so many people in our community, some who are still alive, some who have already passed, and finding a way that's scalable to recognize all the people who have contributed to our schools is something that I would very much be down to exploring. So thank you, Annie, for continuing to organize us in that regard. Any other?
I think someone's trying to get in. I'll be right back. I think someone's trying to get into my office. Just 1 second. You guys continue. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just chime in. I completely agree with Tara. I think that makes sense to have that kind of predictability. Is that what that document is trying to get at? The starts of that sort of framework of how we'll consider naming?
Well, we had the question of, isn't there a policy on this, or should there be a policy on this? And Annie retrieved this policy FF, the naming of school facilities. And I think we kind of overlooked it as our guiding document because it's naming school facilities, and we're not exactly naming school facilities when we're putting someone's name on a scoreboard. But when you read the language of the policy, it also refers to assets at the school.
Right.
So it suggests a process, and I think it would be great. A process that's consistent with our policies, promotes messages aligned with our mission, our vision, our goals, designated not to restrict the use of a space. It's a good policy, and if it needs to be adjusted, we should adjust it. But there is a guiding policy, and it advises of an orderly procedure that we take it up at the next school committee, and that we review it and vote on it. But, even if, and this policy is excellent, and also when we have a significant expenditure like the playground or the fields, and, whatever it is in the future, there will invariably be an opportunity to receive generous donations, and also very clearly delineate what certain levels of donations will give to people, and that we hold fast to that.
And I will say we did that with the fields. That's how we started years ago, and folks remember that didn't get as much traction as we did. So I think that sort of went by the wayside.
I see.
We still have our major donors, and so now we've had a specific donation request for naming rights. So I think for the fields, we're a little bit in the middle. It's just kind of agree with the intent. Let's figure out the most equitable, transparent way possible to move forward. Because I definitely don't want, if somebody had already given, to feel like, well, I would have given more, or I wish I would have given for this naming right. So I think it deserves a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Ethan, any comments or questions?
Yeah, I think I said something similar last week, but I agree with Tara. I agree with Paul. I just keep thinking about, like, if we're going to do naming, if we're going to have something be named, it feels like something that we should kind of be, like, obviously we're going to have people that want to name things, but we should be the ones driving kind of how it gets done. I guess I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but having that policy and having a procedure in place so that it's not just when somebody decides, hey, I'd like to do this, can I do this? It's more of a formal process.
Right.
I would like to say, just given, from my perspective, given the history with the fields and what we've gone through, it's almost hard to remember where we started, right? It would be nice to be able to be flexible and meet some of the interests that we have in front of us, right? There's some good opportunities. I'm more amenable to naming, putting names and recognition on scoreboards, and maybe there is a softball family that's particularly interested, and a baseball family that's interested. So I'm okay with that. So it'd be great if we could find a way forward, and be predictable, and find a way forward that also doesn't impact anybody who's already donated.
Right, or find an alternate way to recognize that person in an equally substantial way, but allows us to have similar additional ways to recognize people.
Yeah.
We only have 2 scoreboards, right?
Right, true.
One,
I think you had mentioned too, Humira, years ago, or a year ago, was the benches.
right. I love the idea of benches. Like, we have such a beautiful walkway now, and people, I love seeing people walk their dogs, and just, getting exercise. Even in the middle of the school day, a person might, take their lunch out there, and I think a place to sit would be phenomenal. So benches that are that recognize. I even said those like Hollywood like stars that go in pavement, that it could just really add some, pizzazz to our property.
Ceremonies where we put our hands in the cement.
I think we could get really creative and really
Ethan
recognize.
Percy Walk of Fame. There we go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
There's so many possibilities. So thank you for keeping an open mind, and let's explore what's possible.
I agree with all of that. Just like taking bits and pieces. I agree with Miss Ruger. I agree with Mr. Pfeiffer, and I agree with you as well. I find that we should definitely be open minded, and I also like your idea of the benches and outdoors. I mean, I guess I have more insight on that because I also eat lunch outside as well. So I feel like it's really nice to have the benches as well, like during the games. It'd be easier.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be. I think people would appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you. And we look forward to engaging our committee in further discussions about this when we have something to look at. All right, we're going to move forward to the business manager report. Chris. And you're on mute.
Okay, my apologies for that.
It's all right.
I have 3 reports for you, the usual 3. We can start with the revolving accounts report. Not a lot of change really in the balances on many of these accounts. The ones that are showing major change, lunch and preschool, both have not had the April revenues posted yet. So once they are posted, you'll see a pretty decent change in the dollar amount of the balances for those. But everything else has really been staying relatively flat. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Certainly, as we get to the close of the year, it's nice to see that in many of these accounts, we've, pretty much kept the balance somewhat close to where we started the year. It's good because we'd like to finish the year on, a positive note with all of these, obviously. So we're certainly in good shape to be doing that. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the revolving accounts. Okay. We can just jump to the expense report. This is the regular budget report that we have. Again, this is through, I believe last Friday was when I ran the report. So it's relatively current. We've got a few more payrolls to go yet. And as you can see, we have about $1.5 million remaining in the budget, which would just about get us to the end. So that's, again, another good sign. As always, of course, with the budget at this point in time, you really start to see the differences in the budgeted amount versus the actual amounts. And, for hundreds of reasons, salary accounts would have people leaving and different people coming in at different salaries, or, just say like electricity, where we just used more electricity this year than we have in the past, but in general, again, I think it's more important really to look at the bottom line of where the budget is, because as long as we can offset an overage on one account with savings from another account, really there's no problem there. And as I said, we're in good shape here. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the regular budget.
Yeah, that would be my only question, Chris. Is there any one line item that in particular gives you pause or things to think about for next year?
We have made some adjustments, just in reviewing this. One of the things like the telephone account, which we had plans of switching our phone plan to a different vendor, and that would have been savings for us. And then unfortunately, with the way it was done years ago with the install of the new phone system, there was a delay in getting the elementary school installed. And so that contract started a couple of years later. The company wouldn't let us out of that contract. So we now have to wait until the third contract expires before we can switch. And so we have reflected that in next year's budget just to, to make sure that, again, we've covered our, what we're going to see for bills in that area. So, I mean, really, there's a lot of overages. Maintenance, for example, is another account where things are starting to break. I mean, they just are. And, we're looking at, we repaired the roof above the stage in Hopkins the other day, which is an adventure in itself just to get a roofing vendor to come and do a repair. But, really just taking a look at that roof, that was not done in 2012 with the other rubber membrane roof. This is an asphalt shingle roof. And, it's these types of things that they're getting older and they're going to need replacement. So we have seen a number of these where things are just breaking down. We just replaced the water heater, for example, last week. Water heater broke, the kitchens need hot water, so, and I can tell you that a water heater for the size of the high school is about $16,000. So, obviously we don't budget for things like that, but we work the budget throughout the year to make sure that we can, take an expense like that and still, end on a, I don't want to say positive note, but on a good note at the end of the year. We don't really want a lot of funds remaining either, because that meant that we didn't spend them on what we had planned on, so, but yeah, again, just rolling with, with expenses like that hit us and moving forward. So.
Thanks.
And the final report is the grants report. Again, spending down the grants at a pretty good pace. So that's, certainly good to see. We have a lot of grant stipends that will be paid on the next payroll. So you'll really see these grant spending totals increase on your next report. Typically, we wait till the end of the year to do that. And we thought the last payroll in May was a good time to do it. That gives us time in June to draw down the remaining funds for the grant. We want the grant funds to all be drawn down if possible before July 1st, because then we run into different fiscal years and it's just so much easier to have the funds in the correct fiscal year. So the sooner we get them expended, the sooner we can draw them down. And it usually takes DESE about a week to 10 days to get the funds to us. So we have that in mind as well when we plan these things. And, the goal, as always, is to spend them down in full by the end of the year.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Any final questions for Chris on any of these reports?
Just noting what I saw in the paper, right, about the state budget potentially for next year. Senator Comerford seems like they're doing a great job for advocating for us here in Western Mass. I don't know, Annie, if you've got any interpretations of what we're going to see from the state for next year.
Yeah, I don't at this point. I mean, she certainly is advocating, doing a banner job of advocating for small and rural districts throughout Western Massachusetts. I would say the entire Western Massachusetts delegation, certainly Senator Comerford, but the entire delegation is working really hard. I know that Humira participated in Day on the Hill. She probably has more insightful comments. I will say we're still early days, right? So we have the governor's budget, House, like we're still in reconciliation, like people are debating what's going to happen. But it is hopeful that there are folks who are strongly advocating for more attention to Western Massachusetts. Humira and I will also be at an event held by the Northampton Youth Commission. I believe that's next week, Humira and Secretary T will be up here. But I don't know, Humira, if you had any additional indications from your Day on the Hill?
Well, I can tell you that the governor's budget came in lower than last year, and the revenue picture is not pretty. Unfortunately, it's a dampened picture across the country, so we're not alone, and it puts even more pressure on towns. But rural towns in particular get hit hard because of our hold harmless spending situation. And so, we have fixed expenses that have to be covered, and the state hasn't cracked open the Chapter 70 formula for over, about a decade. And so there's a proposal to do that and to reevaluate, and that would systemically address some of the issues that the rural communities face. But in the absence of that, there was a commission that studied the financial issues of rural areas, of which Hadley is one, and some of the economic needs, and outlined that the state needs to put aside 60 additional million, and that was in like 2 years ago dollars, 60 additional million just for parity. And this is an equity issue because you have smaller towns just unable to provide their students with the same kind of education as some of the other bigger towns. And the Student Opportunities Act was a big win for education in Massachusetts, but it largely helped urban districts, which really needed the funds. So no knock on that initiative, but it does leave a major imbalance when compared to rural areas. And Senator Comerford has been out front and vocal, as has Senator Lewis and a number of others who understand this picture. And as Division 5 chair, I've been working to try to create a coalition with other communities. And there was a group of us that traveled together to a number of House and Senators' offices to emphasize some key shared issues like charter funding, the Chapter 70 formula, special ed funding / transportation for special ed, and the needs of rural schools. So, MASC, the association that represents us, school committees, has a much longer list, but those 4 really narrow in on the interests of towns like Hadley and a number of other towns in Western Massachusetts. And Senator Comerford is a big proponent and stands in our corner.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you posted. There might be a regional event that comes up that brings legislators from the region together, along with inviting other districts from around the Commonwealth who share similar issues, but perhaps don't know to get behind those same issues in the same way. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Just one thing I would add that's concerning to me, again, legislative delegation is doing a wonderful job, but I can't make sense of the fact that the governor's local aid proposal provided over a 20% increase in charter tuition reimbursement. This really has to do with the town side of things. And I know that Shardul is on the call from our town finance committee. But both the House and the Senate budget recommended a decrease of about 21% to tuition reimbursement. So paying close attention to where that will land, that does again hit small towns, small municipalities particularly hard. So we'll be monitoring that.
Yes. All right. Any other comments or thoughts or questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to, I think, Chris, there is another aspect to your report. It's the geothermal project.
Yes, so we had been discussing this for a couple of months. The request from the designer for the additional $25,000 to come from their phase 2 budget to cover overages they've found in the phase 1 budget. We discussed it a couple of times. Paul was not at those meetings, and you requested that I reach out to him and just kind of get his take on it. He did let me know that he was okay with using the $25,000 from phase 2. Of course, he's here tonight, so I suppose he could always weigh in a little further if he'd like to. But the thing about this whole project is that we are looking at the possibility of a vendor like a Trane, that presented to us a while back to basically handle this project. And, if we do the design work in full, what happens is they will take those designs and, probably utilize the majority of them, but they won't just take them and say, okay, this is what we're doing. You know, they're going to, excuse me, have their design team go through it, possibly make some changes to it. And the designers' phase 2 work will be severely diminished to maybe non-existent, really, because they won't be overseeing the construction like they would have been if, you know, if we went out to bid. So I just want you to be aware of that, you know, it seems like a simple trade-off. Well, we're just taking it from phase 2 and moving it to phase 1, but it's not quite as simple, because we might not utilize them at all for phase 2. Or, you know, I mean, if funding, say, dries up for this type of project and the project doesn't go through at all, then again, there's no phase 2, and we took $25,000 out of it. So just want to make sure that everybody knows. That's all. You know, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can about this.
And so then maybe Chris, remind us, what's the benefit? Why do it now?
Well, I guess the benefit is that, you know, from what the designer told me, you know, they were building a design on a roughly $4 million project that all of a sudden has turned into a $9.5 million project. And as any designer does, they charge, you know, basically a percentage of the project amount as their fee. And of course, their fee was based on the $4 million amount. And so they've gone over in their project. So they're really kind of waiting on us. They're not working on it until we tell them that, you know, yes, you can have the $25,000, or essentially we're going to have $25,000 less work done on the project, where it may not get completed, because they're just going to say, okay, this is as far as we're going, you know. So that's really why
that jump from 4 to 9 million could have just involved, you know, double or triple the number of wells. Didn't really require additional designs, but just because the overall project cost is a certain amount, they're charging a percentage of that.
Yeah, I mean, $25,000 is by no means the difference in the percentage between a 4 million and a 9.5 million. I think they were trying to, you know, find something that would work for both sides in it. But yeah, it's really funny with that, because a lot of the cost of a project is, you know, say with the finishes of something. So, you know, you might get a floor, for example, that's, you know, just say like a marble floor that's very expensive, or, you know, tiles, you know, just your basic tiles like we have in the Hopkins hallways. And there's a big difference in cost with that. But as far as design work goes, I mean, they've designed a floor, you know, and so, and I've argued that not only with, you know, with the geothermal, but also with the locker rooms, and even with another design that we were looking to do with the front door entrance. And, you know, I mean, I guess that is the industry standard, and that's what they go by. And argue as I might, you know, they don't really waver on that.
Ardul, welcome.
Yeah, I haven't really chimed in just because I really didn't have anything to add. But I will say,
I'd love for you to introduce yourself to those who might not know you this on the school committee in Washington Circuit.
sure. Shardul Parmar. I've been a resident of Hadley for about 37 years. I went to, actually attended Russell School. I was there for 1 year, and then went to Hopkins, graduated in a long time ago. So I won't go into how long, but you know, education is in school are very important to me. I'm a chemical engineer by education, and with that, I also have an MBA. And so my kids go to Hadley. My kids went through the Hadley school system. My daughter has just finished her first year of college. My son is a freshman at Hopkins. So
Great, welcome. And you are on the finance committee, and you're our finance committee liaison.
yes, so on the finance committee, you got me as a liaison. So
Awesome.
which is very fortuitous for you guys because obvious reasons. Um, but otherwise, this I just want to chime in for this geothermal project. And as an engineer, and then also as my family, we do construction. We've done projects in Hadley, and understanding what it involves, and understanding also what the finance committee is dealing with, and the fiscal, I guess, issues going forward. I would just, this is just a bit of advice. I'm not saying yes or no to this. Is that especially with with the other big kind of project, which is the DPW building kind of looming ahead. I would just be careful of how you go and move some of these projects forward, especially when costs are ballooning, just like what we've experienced with the DPW building. And as an engineer, I also want to make sure I'm all for, I have solar at home. I'm all for green initiatives. I drive an electric car, so on and so forth. But when we're doing some of these things, we have to go and understand that when we replace an existing system, when we're introducing any new systems, that mobilization, that there's energy and there's carbon emissions associated with bringing that system into production. In other words, just because you install it doesn't mean that whatever you're installing hasn't created emissions. And that energy that we're consuming to make that equipment, to run the equipment that's installing the wells, installing the equipment, so on and so forth, that has to be understood. And that sometimes, even though these systems we put in might be more efficient or less emitting than what we're replacing. However, when you go and look at the entire life of the system, you have to make sure that you're really making a net offset. But and also understanding that the exist system that you're replacing has a lifespan, has an expected lifespan, and that whenever you go and replace something that's earlier than its expected lifespan, that's also increasing, because that equipment's going to go into landfill. It's going to be something that again, you're reducing the life of it, and then essentially decreasing the offset over that period of time. So, and cognizant of just the cost increases and everything else, and spending money going forward, just be very analytical on all of those things before you move forward. Just because I don't want to see, there's a lot of things that do happen, and people spend a lot of time and effort into a lot of different projects, but then when they don't move forward, that money is lost. That's an that you can't recapture that. And so, sorry to be long-winded, but I just want to make sure everybody's at least aware of kind of my finance committee thoughts on that.
Thank you, Shardul. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts. This has been a discussion that's taken place over many, many months, and we're nowhere near pulling the trigger. We're really simply in exploration phase, and but thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to get back to the matter of the designer fee, which seems to have ballooned because of their predicted size of the cost of, but not necessarily due to additional work that they did on the project. And Chris, what was the original cost of the designer fee for phase one? You're on mute.
Sorry, I keep muting myself because I'm coughing, and I hate to cough during the meeting. The original cost was $250 for phase one and $100 for phase two.
Right. So just again, I want to make sure as a team, we're ready to go forward with the increased fee that they're charging us due to project size, not necessarily to additional work. And it's a vendor that we may or may not use going forward. Are we in agreement that we want to do that? And Paul, I really wanted you to weigh in particular because of your expertise on the clean energy projects that you've run. And so I value your input here.
Yeah, thanks. You're asking a good question. So Chris, we spent the 250, they're asking for 25 over the 100.
Yes.
And it's not, the scope of work hasn't changed, as you noticed. It's the same deliverables. It's just that the overall base cost is doubled, more than doubled.
Yeah, I mean, he did say that, you know, they've done more work than expected as well. And maybe that's the part they're trying to recoup. But in the majority of it is, as he said, you know, look, we were designing for a $4 million project. Now we're designing for a $9.5 million project. And, you know.
Don't they have contractual obligations about what
they do?
Yeah.
You know, the original amount was 250 and they agreed to do it. You know, that becomes, and, you know, I did run it by Kim and, you know, Kim basically said that, yeah, you know, I mean, you know, they signed a contract for this amount. But, and, you know, we have three choices. We can pay them the 25,000. We can not pay them the 25,000 and the third choice, of course, is that they can walk away from it. And, you know, what would end up happening, or what I would assume would end up happening, is if we tell them that we're not going to pay anymore and keep going, which I'm fine doing, quite honestly. I'm okay with telling him that, no, we're not going to give you anything extra and we still expect to see the final plans. They could just turn around and say, you know, okay, you know, there is a clause in the contract, and it is a standard in any contract that if the amount of the project goes up by 10%, they're allowed to renegotiate. So that is in the contract as well. And I'm sure that's what they're utilizing with this. So if it came down to, you know, something that went to court or something, my guess, I'm not an attorney, so I can't, you know, fully say, but my guess is, and Kim acknowledged that as well, that hey, there's a clause in there that this is their renegotiation, you know, is what they're doing.
But it's their estimate.
It's their estimate. That is correct.
Estimated 250, we can hold their feet to the fire. We could also say, well, if we move forward with you with phase 2, then we'll cover whatever overages you're suggesting. But I don't feel great about throwing good money after bad.
I guess the estimate was based off of their estimated cost of the project.
That is correct. It's their estimate.
And that now they're revising, but they're the ones that are revising that estimate.
No, actually, the original estimate was done by Eversource. The new estimate, the $9.5 million.
Not the engineering cost, the project cost.
Right.
Who revised that?
CHA revised that.
They did. So that's what Shardul is saying. CHA, they did the revision of the cost. I think that's what you're saying, Shardul.
Yeah.
They did the revision of the cost that's now driving the escalation in the fee.
And what's the deliverable we're waiting on them for? What's the deliverable?
It would be basically the final designs.
Final designs. And then, so if we don't get that, what happens? We don't get the final designs.
We would get the final designs because they're contractually obligated, aren't they, for $250,000 to hand over the designs?
They are obligated, but again, their contract allows them to renegotiate. Now, you know, negotiation is a two-way street.
Right.
They can ask us for money and we can say no, you know.
So that's it. I'm just saying, as from a contractor, from a developer side of things, they're the ones that are. It's not like there's an independent person saying that it's costing. It'd be one thing if Eversource came to us and there's a third party telling us now this is the new cost. They've initiated this clause based on their new appraisal of what the cost is, essentially, of this project.
Which hasn't been vetted. It seems like a conflict of interest. They could inflate it to whatever and get, you know, demand whatever.
I mean, this is something that's part of their scope is to give us a project cost estimate, right?
Right.
So ideally, we hired them because we trust them. And so hopefully we're not saying we don't trust them now. So it's $25,000 on top of 250 or 25,000 on top of 250 plus 100.
The 250 is phase one, 100 is phase two. If we utilize them,
I
they
see.
want to take 25 from the phase two money,
I see.
leaving only 75 for phase two and using 25 of that for phase one.
I want to clarify that because two different prepositions. You just said that really clearly, but I'm going to say it back because two different prepositions floated out there. The first was 25 from the 100, and then somebody else had said 25 over the 100. But I just want to be very clear. What you're saying, they're saying is from. So it is not increasing the cost from 350 total in two phases to 375.
Right.
It's moving cost out of phase two into phase one.
But you
Right, the
think that
total
they're
cost
gonna really
remains
hold it to 100? You think they're gonna say, oh yeah, we took it 25 out of their 100, your phase three, your phase two, we're gonna keep at 75.
Well, this was their idea to move it from phase one, phase two to phase one. So
And so it could also be their idea that well, actually in today's cost, it's gonna be 125,000 for phase
Yeah.
two.
Well, no, I mean, that should be contractually bound. It's the 10% clause factors in.
And so we're contractually bound to pay them 100,000.
I think if you
20%.
accepted the renegotiation that Kim would recommend that Kim clearly, like that renegotiation would have to be, legal would have to write out what exactly those parameters.
yeah, there would have to be a new agreement.
And do we find ourselves in this position because we're debating going with an ESCO and ESCO is going to likely put that out to bid and choose a different vendor, and so they're not going to get phase two anyways, they may as well take it out of phase two.
That's what really kind of makes it a question mark. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be
Yeah,
terrible to take the money from phase two to phase one. I mean, we're still at 350 total and that would be the total, but if we don't utilize them for phase two, that's where it becomes an issue.
We do have a value, regardless of whether we go with an ESCO, there's a value of having that project design in hand. Correct.
Which we'll get anyways.
Sure.
Theoretically, we might have to fight for it. How long? When do we need it? Is there time here? Is there a value of time?
Well, the value of time would be, the rate of inflation is just,
No, I mean, from I'm looking at the dates here. If they balk and say, no, we're not going to give it to you because our legal counsel just said they might have claim to withhold, correct? That's what.
Yes. Yeah.
So Humira, they don't have to give it to us. They can say they won't, and then it's a choice to how we respond. Then there might be a negotiation. Then there might be some litigation. The negotiation's a lot faster, obviously. So if they say, I mean, that could be our opening pitch. Is like, look, we don't have a desire to spend more. We'd like you to wrap up, meet your obligation, give us the deliverables now based on what's already been allocated to the 250. And if they say, well, we can't meet that deliverable target because we don't have money, then, I mean, is that essentially what they've said? Is that how clearly they've put it?
Yeah, that they've spent more than budgeted on this project, and
But that's different than we can't meet the deliverables because the 10% overrun. I mean, so if they've spent more of their own volition, that's their problem. They still need to meet their deliverables.
Yeah.
I guess there's enough gray here. I would say that maybe it deserves pushing back and just say, look, we need our deliverables now because we are considering, especially going with the ESCO.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to take from phase two since we may not be utilizing them for phase two.
yeah, I can push back, certainly. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. They're with the ESCO, they're not going to be in the running for a possible ESCO, right? They're not, they don't qualify as that. It would
I
be-
don't believe so.
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know the answer to that. If
But
they-
ESCOs hire designers or ESCOs do the design work themselves? Because if ESCOs hire designers, they might choose to go with the designer who's most familiar with the project and who's already done phase one. So they are potentially in the running for that.
So I don't know if every single service that they need, they keep in-house, but when an ESCO is responsible, they're the performance contractor. They're responsible
Right.
for making sure they essentially become the OPM. Depending on the ESCO that's hired, we can't say, the school committee would review and then determine who they want. I can't say that who you pick, what in-house services they would have.
Yeah. I mean, personally, it does seem after going through this conversation that we get some more clarity on why they need 25K. And if we just say, hey, look, 250 is what we contracted for, we want to meet your deliverables, and see if they can't meet that, then we need to have that conversation. And is 25 sort of hedging the bet as we move into phase 2, or do they need just 10,000 to meet those deliverables? Right. Because it seems like obviously we can't commit to phase 2 with that.
Right.
And we're talking about asking an ESCO to do the remainder of our work. We would not be initiating phase 2 until we had our ESCO set up. Is that not correct?
They would basically be handling phase 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we, as far as I'm concerned, based on what I've learned about ESCOs, we want to get it in ESCO's hands as soon as possible before we do any further work, so that they're evaluating what the investment is and what the trade-off is, and they're helping us get our return on investment. And in my view, they're best suited to do that. And so we want to move from managing this direct engineering design issue to getting it in their hands, so they're managing those aspects.
That seems to make sense. Yeah. Right. While also closing out this contract we spent to, because there's a valuable product.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, Chris, thank you. You've gotten advice from us. Paul, I really appreciate you weighing in on that. And everyone.
Thanks for waiting for me to weigh in.
Yeah.
Must have.
Problem. I think it was worthy of wrestling through all those issues. And I'm glad we got to this point. Thank you, Chris. Let us know.
Thank
Okay.
you. Will do.
All right, we're moving next to the item F, JICFB, bullying prevention and intervention. Christine is not here, but Ethan, can you take us through it?
Yeah, so this is the first read for the bullying prevention policy that we've rehabbed. You'll find it's pretty long, and there is a lot more in this policy, I believe, than in previous ones around cyberbullying. Some updated things that have been put in place just to make way for kind of the added technology that is available to students, and kind of how kids are communicating on technology as well. So this is the first read for you all.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will revisit this for potential approval next month. Thanks everyone for giving it a good solid read. We're moving next to action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the payroll and expense warrants for May 2025?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the next item is the approval of the school committee minutes of April 28th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving next to school committee updates and general announcements. Tara, can you tell us about playground, CPAC, and CES?
Yes, so CES meets next week, so I will send out an email after the meeting next week to update you on that. CPAC, I don't think they've met again since they met with Dr. McKenzie. They had I'm trying to remember now if we talked about that at our last meeting, that they did meet with Annie and a few other staff, and I've seen emails still how happy and excited they were to meet with staff and hear how engaged and interested our administration is in including them and getting feedback from the CPAC. So they're doing good, and they'll be planning for next year. I feel like they're pretty strong. Playgrounds. I actually have to touch base with Chris to find out. We were waiting to find out one last piece about the surfacing before we went ahead. And I'm not sure if he had the opportunity to get in touch with the vendor. Well, let me rephrase that. If the vendor got back in touch with him, it's been a little bit of a communication issue. So hopefully by next meeting, I will have very positive news to bring forward to you on that.
Wonderful, thank you. On the finance front, I'm pleased to report that at town meeting, the school budget was passed. Yay, thank you everyone for working on that. Tomorrow is the town voting towards all of its expenditures. So please, please, please make it out to the senior center and vote. As one person said, it's very expensive to go through the process of town meeting and approving things and then only to have things fail because they didn't get enough votes. So we don't want that. Please, to the viewer at home and all of you and connecting with your friends, make sure they're going out to vote for our various initiatives. Moving to the next item, fields. I wonder, Paul or Chris, beyond signs, is there anything else to share?
I don't really news, Chris, do you?
Not really much other than I did walk the fields a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it's so nice to see that the grass has filled in nicely after last year's struggles, really, with getting that grass to grow. It's really come in very nicely now. It's looking so much better, and it's, I have to be honest, quite a relief for me to see that. And, you know, there are a few spots still that need to be reseeded. I did reach out to Omasta to let them know that, you know, we might want to meet and, you know, just go over those few spots. And he asked when it was fertilized, and I had told him, well, it was actually fertilized on Easter Sunday. So he said it's too soon after that fertilization to seed. So we just have to work out with him when he can reseed those few spots that need it. You know, the specs called for any space bigger than about an 8-inch circle. We get reseeded, and there are a few of those places around. So we'll get those taken care of as soon as possible. It's probably best at this point to wait until the seasons are over, and you know, then they can hydroseed it in those spots in the summer.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay.
Moving next to capital, Christine's not here, but I wonder, Annie or Chris, do you have anything to share about capital?
No, I don't think we have any updates right now. And no, nothing major. I mean, aside from the conversation you just had about our budget.
Okay, great. Policy, Ethan, you presented the bullying policy. Are there any other policy related matters, or I see upcoming events under your policy?
I'm not sure what upcoming events are, Annie, if you have any idea about that, but there are no
Policy
updated
party?
policies.
You're not holding a policy party?
I mean, if we can create one, we can certainly have a policy party.
We should.
There's a lot of excitement coming down the road.
What did I put there? I guess I did think we should have a policy party. It's such scintillating conversation once a month.
Lots of reading, silent reading.
All right, item F, general announcements. David Phil's not here as select board liaison to school committee, but are there any other announcements from anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we do not have executive session this evening. Our next meeting dates are, let's see, we're discussing that right now. So what's the fourth Monday in June?
So what I wanted to ask, actually, the fourth Monday in June is June 23rd, but I am wondering if folks are available June 16th, because we have a bunch of administrators with unused vacations. So I'd like to be able to have the option to be gone once the students are gone for a little bit for those. So didn't know, are people available June 16th?
I can tell you that I won't be available. I'm traveling to Stanford that week. However, I am totally in support of moving the June 23rd date. Annie, are you gone all that week?
I don't know yet. So is it okay if I put out a like a calendar sooner rather than later? Is that okay? I just want to check with, I'm trying to schedule something.
I also wonder whether we should look at the weekend, the Monday following, June 30th. So it's not the fourth Monday, but it would be the fifth Monday.
Okay, so, is it okay with folks if I just do a quick check and then by next week, get a calendar out to you guys? Is that okay?
Yes. Does
So I
it,
know the 16th is off, but maybe it's that we end up doing something later and I could do the 23rd, but are people available the 30th as an option?
I'm unsure if I'll be available due to the trip starting on the 14th. So we'll see. Hopefully I will be, and I will try my best to attend the meeting.
you might not be available regardless, is what I'm hearing. So I totally understand that. We're giving you a pass on this one. I don't expect you to patch in at what time would it be? Some crazy hour in the morning. Yeah. So Annie, you'll get back to us.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a hold right now in, on the 30th. But I will, double check on what we're trying to accomplish there and I will send something out.
Wonderful.
Thank you for being,
Of course. All right. Well, we are 10 minutes shy of our goal. It's 6:51. Thank you, everyone, for an efficient meeting. And we will see you all again in June.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.